Hello everyone, welcome to the show. We have Miguel Encarnação, who's a Senior Vice President of Enterprise Data Analytics and the Head of Data Visualization at Regions Bank. Miguel spent over 20 years in technology innovation and leadership roles across industries such as ACT in educational assessment, Humana in health insurance, and the Fraunhofer Society in applied R&D. He's an expert in information visualization, AI, human-computer interaction, VR, and AR. He also serves as a professor of practice and adjunct lecturer of business analytics, innovation, and computer science. Welcome to the show, Miguel. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
You have a very interesting role as the head of data visualization, Miguel. What's your typical week at work like?
Since we're in a remote environment now, right, can skip over getting ready for work and commuting, but there is no typical week really. And the reason is data visualization is not well understood yet at Regions or most companies, I think. And so depending on the need, I'm doing a lot of evangelism, right, explaining to people what data visualization is or what it's not. And very often it's actually the discussions that are going on in this product development effort that, where you have to explain to people why you want to change the way they are looking at information and at data.
One thing which stood out is the focus on visualization and simplifying the consumption of information. In many organizations, they usually bundle this with the business intelligence efforts or with, say, as part of analytics, and which is where a role of a leadership focus on data visualization, many organizations miss to do that. Can you give example of how this has helped Regions Bank, particularly in the last couple of years?
I wish I could, because we are still standing at the beginning, right? As I said, I just joined recently. The team was established recently. So our success stories are more of anecdotal nature at this point, I want to say. Going back to your question, we had some success early on by just showing in some situations where data was discussed based on tables. That's what a lot of actually business people like to do, because all the information is there. They like to discuss things based on tables, to just introduce. So it was table about data, for example, where it was a progression of certain data elements from one stage to another. And so we quickly, if you want, suggested to use Sankey diagrams for them to show the flow. And people couldn't believe how much more they could see and how quicker they can not necessarily make decisions, but converge towards where decisions needed to be made. Because very often that's the biggest challenge, right? You can make a million decisions, but which ones are the urgent ones? And important ones to focus on. So that was, I think, one of the small anecdotal success stories.
And often people look at visualization as just dashboards. I hear this often in the industry. People just equate the two. And a lot of people equate visualization with data storytelling as well, though there is a distinction. So I'd be curious to know how you distinguish these two terms, Miguel.
So I take a very engineering approach to that. So if you step back, first of all, why are we using data visualization in the first place, right? Because it is the most effective sense that human beings have with the highest bandwidth, right? And so we're really using visualization to reduce the complexity of the data. And data is really, if you want, defined in terms of a language that machines use, right? Zeros and ones and numbers, etc. That's not consumable for humans that thinks in terms of patterns and relationships and those types of things. That's why we use visualization really as a translation of machine language into something consumable for human beings. And so if you think about that, it is a communication tool if you want, but you have a sender and you have a receiver. So on the receiving side is really about communication. On the sending side, if you want, it is about first creating the content, reducing the complexity. It is about analysis. But within these two categories, communication and analysis, you can envision a few subcategories, right? Communication, why are you communicating? You might communicate just to create awareness around something. Okay. Without the need for action. A lot of info charts are like that. Right? It's just creating awareness around main numbers and KPIs and make it as consumable and engaging as possible. But there's no expectation that your audience does something with it. You just want them to know. And you want everyone to get the same message, right? But then on the communication side, you also have something like monitoring dashboards.
Right.
This is not about finding new insight. This is about quickly getting notified about deviations from the norm. You sit in a nuclear reactor, you want to know when the rods are overheating. This is not about drill down and analysis of why it's happening. This is about ringing the bell.
Yeah.
Communication, also just communication, but to take action.
Right. Actionability. Yeah, absolutely.
And then there is, if you want, the third category, I would imagine, the reporting. So this is really communicating all the typically requested information and findings to a very knowledgeable audience that will take the time to actually read all that and digest it and discuss it, but to basically create starting point for major discussion, potentially decision making, but more likely for new requests for new information. And once again, it is initially just about communication, right? But it is about having just the right balance of overview and detail for everyone to create situational awareness and get onto the same page and have enough information to not just create awareness, but create understanding and trust into that information.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of points, and some of the other questions I had, I'm glad you touched upon many of these. So you talked about the understanding and actionability, and connects back to decision making. If we look at how data visualization can enable decision making, I think you laid out the path, right? So that's one aspect. And the other thing, when you talked about the different types of analytics, that is also based on the user who's going to use the visualization. So you talked about answering the what question, the why question, and exploratory analytics for defining the hypothesis, which probably is targeted at a different kind of a user. So I think the takeaway, what I take away from this answer is in terms of deciding the purpose of the visualization, the user, and based on that, coming up with the right format, visuals, and all of that will follow. How can data visualization help organizations that are adopting AI? And what should leaders know about the intersection between data visualization and AI, Miguel?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually great that you asked. It's a hot topic these days, right? The aspect of ethics in AI, explainability of AI, making machine learning understandable. And the interesting aspect of it is all that is geared towards non-technical users, right? It's for regulators, it's for decision makers, right? And so there has to be a translation of this complex stuff that's going on in the black box called AI to what it actually does that is understandable from a non-technical perspective. And there's a whole research field now called explainable AI. And within that, there's actually a research field called visualization for explainable AI. There's even some research going on, not just for this purpose, but how to visualize analyst bias to the analysts themselves so that they can change how they analyze the data based on knowing that they have applied apparently some bias in just looking at certain data points and not others. If you then display to them the data points they might have missed so far, they can still decide, I know these data points are not relevant, therefore I intentionally skip them. Or, oh my God, maybe I should look at those data points as well because I unintentionally applied a bias here. So visualization, once again, if you want, unearths issues that are previously hidden in a very consumable way to help us understand very complex issues, whether it is on the AI side, machine learning side, or whether it is on just analyzing things, right? So that is where visualization can help AI.
Let's talk about the latest trends and a little bit looking into the future of data visualization, Miguel. You are an expert in human-computer interaction. What are some latest trends at the intersection of data visualization and HCI? And where do you see this going?
Yeah, it's actually related to several things I already talked about. So these two areas were never independent, if you want, right? Because in the word human-computer interaction, you see already it's about how do we make computing systems work better for the human. Mm-hmm. As we have already established, our main sense of consuming information is the visual system, right? And therefore, human-computer interaction always had a huge emphasis on how we visualize information. And a lot of advances in visualization come actually from the human-computer interaction field. So that's, if you want, one statement. Some newer, again, research areas or trend. I don't know if I should call them trend. Trend is always which area has adopted it already, right? There's a lot going on in research that I see could be very valid for businesses very soon. On the other hand, there are many trends that I'm seeing now on their third or fourth wave, like augmented reality or virtual reality, which I know will still not make it into the business, into certain businesses, because there's a lot of hype associated with it, right? One trend is because of the human and human-computer interaction, there's actually from within that community this new area that is being explored called human-centered AI. It's very much not exclusively, but one major aspect is this visualization for explainable AI. But the whole purpose is how can we as humans better understand AI in order to better design AI, in order to better control AI, and avoid those end day videos that we have seen in many movies, right? And be aware of biases.
Final question, Miguel. If there's one message or a recommendation you would like to share with chief data officers, what would that be?
First one is make sure you have a head of data visualization, because it is really so important, right? Imagine a world without effective data visualization. All the investments you're putting into analyzing data and creating insights goes out the window. It's not a surprise. There's this interesting study out there that despite all this investment in AI and data analytics, only 23% of executives think their companies are data driven, and even less think that they themselves have any way of making decisions based on data. Those numbers actually went down by 10 points over the last 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so what's interesting is that means despite all this investment, we are missing something. We are missing the translation of data investment into decision-making value. And that's the sweet spot of data visualization. That's what it's all about. And so just keeping it as, if you want, a little bit an appendicitis of data analytics at the end somewhere, optional if you need it, it's just a missed opportunity. So that's really the message for all chief data officers or any decision makers in an industry that needs to make decisions based on data. Put an emphasis on data visualization for communication as well as analysis.
Yeah, that's a great message. Yeah. Thank you. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for all the insights. I'm sure the audience found it insightful. Thanks for joining in. And yeah, thank you, Miguel.
Thanks for having me.